I think Ethereum is weeks, not days.
But within July?
Within July.
The Ethereum ETF launch is a big deal. That brings a lot of attention on crypto again. It brings a lot of capital flows. It's a rising tide lifts all boats story.
I suspect that there are going to be $15 billion in net flows between now and the end of 2025. If you look at the size of Bitcoin ETFs, the ETH ETF should be about 25% of that market. You know, the environment in DC changed around Ethereum over the summer in positive ways.
Welcome back. In today's video, we're exploring one of the hottest topics in the crypto world right now, the Ethereum ETF. We'll give you the latest updates, expert insights, and what this could mean for the future of Ethereum and the broader crypto market. Stay tuned as we break down key highlights from top industry voices and discuss the potential impact on your investments. Let's get started.
The Ethereum ETF launch is a big deal. That brings a lot of attention on crypto again. It brings a lot of capital flows. It's a rising tide lifts all boats story. Looking forward, U.S. election sets the tone for policymaking and the legislative agenda for the next 4 years. And then beyond that, I think it's just the ongoing trend of adoption of Bitcoin, global engagement with exchange-traded products like the UK and Hong Kong launching their own, as well as increased access to crypto ETFs here in the US.
Are we still seeing money move into the overall ecosystem for the second half of the year, or do we trade where we're currently at, do you think?
So I think a lot of it hinges on the Ethereum ETF and the launch of that. So a lot of the market sentiment is trying to gauge what kind of capital inflows do we see from that event in general. So from what I've been able to gauge, I think the market is pricing in something along the lines of $750 million to $1 billion of net inflows into Ethereum ETF products on a monthly basis. And so if we start to match that, I think that creates positive support for the industry. If we surpass that, note that Bitcoin was at a pace of north of $2.5 billion. That's where you start thinking about maybe Ethereum tests all-time highs in the mid 4,000 range. And again, rising tide lifts all boats.
Bitwise CCO Catherine Dowling recently commented on the timeline for the Ether ETF's launch. Following the SEC's landmark decision in January to approve spot Bitcoin ETFs, billions of dollars have entered the market, boosting the crypto sector. In May 2024, the SEC also approved a rule change to allow spot Ethereum ETFs. However, these products are still in the registration phase with the SEC. In a recent interview with Bloomberg, Dowling mentioned that the S1 filing process is nearing completion, with fewer and fewer issues remaining. She stated, "We are close to the finish line for launch. Once the S1 filings are approved, issuers will submit applications to exchanges for listing. The exchange will then verify that the ETF meets listing requirements. After listing, the market maker will set the price based on the underlying asset's value, and the ETF will go live for trading. These final steps could take anywhere from a few hours to a day, as seen with the Bitcoin ETF launch in January. Earlier this week, ETF store president Nate Gerasi mentioned that he expects S1 approvals within 2 weeks. Although there is no set deadline for the SEC to approve these filings, the progress is promising.
As you mentioned, before an ETF goes live, the SEC needs to approve two things: the 19B4, which goes through the Trading and Markets Division, and the S1, which goes through Investment Management. As you mentioned, for spot Ethereum, they approved the 19B4, saying they're ready for trading. The S1 is the disclosures that describes the risks of an ETF. Usually those are approved at the same time. This is a somewhat unusual situation where one was approved without the other. And, the estimates I've seen out there, Bloomberg's ETF analysts expect that these funds could go live the week of July 2nd. I think that's a reasonable estimate, but the truth is we don't know. We have to wait to hear more from the SEC and see where we go from there. Yeah, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes with the SEC, but it's certainly the case that in the Ethereum ecosystem, we saw a lot of developments all at once, right? We saw the consensus lawsuit dropped. We saw this surprise progress on the 19B4s. We saw, maybe some shifting winds in Congress around crypto generally, and maybe around ETH specifically. So I think it's fair to say that, the environment in DC changed around Ethereum over the summer in positive ways. And we're seeing that expressed, from my view, in multiple places. Yeah, my hope and my feeling is that staking is a very important part of the Ethereum ecosystem, and ETPs should be an important part of how people invest in Ether. And therefore, long term, you want to see Ether ETPs that stake. And if you look abroad, if you look in Europe, if you look in Canada, if you look in some other markets, those products exist. There are a few challenges, Tony. There's some liquidity restrictions when you stake that can make processing the ETF a little bit more complex. There are, of course, regulatory questions. But, Europe and Canada proves that we can overcome those and run good products in an ETP structure. So I do think we will get there. But, look, going from no ETF to an ETF is a huge jump. That's what, 90+% of the returns historically. Adding staking would be like a cherry on top. And we and other issuers are going to, hopefully work to make that happen eventually. At least we're going to try.
Now, what are your predictions? I know this is speculating, but what are your predictions as far as what the inflows may look like over the next year for the Ethereum ETFs?
Yeah, we just did an analysis of this. I suspect that there are going to be $15 billion in net flows between now and the end of 2025. Now, I should add a few comments on that. That doesn't mean $15 billion in AUM. That means $15 billion in new money coming in. Of course, Tony, there's already $10 billion in ETH, the grayscale product, which will convert over. And if the price of ETH goes up, which I know many of us think and hope it will, that will increase the AUM as well. $15 billion would be a ton of money. It would make these the second most successful ETF launch of all time after Bitcoin. The way we got those numbers is twofold. We looked at the relative market cap of Bitcoin versus ETH, right, which is about 75-25, and then applied that to the amount of AUM in Bitcoin ETFs on the assumption that most investors will allocate proportionally. And then we looked abroad to Europe and to Canada. And when you look there, ETH ETPs hold about 22 to 23% of the market. So that gives me a feeling that, if you look at the size of Bitcoin ETFs, the ETH ETF should be about 25% of that market. We do more complicated math to get to the exact $15 billion target, but I think you can have a lot of confidence. Wherever you look, there's demand for these spot ETH ETFs. And I think if they launch in the US, there will be demand here as well.
Crypto trader and researcher Teng Yan has predicted a bullish future for Ethereum. In a post on X, Yan anticipates the launch of spot Ethereum ETFs, which he believes could trigger a relief rally. Yan expects the initial spot ETF flows to exceed expectations over the next 12 months. He argues that traditional finance investors who have invested in the Bitcoin ETF will likely diversify by buying ETH as well. This move would capture a broader segment of the crypto market and reduce perceived single asset risk. Yan predicts that Ethereum prices could reach $5,000 or higher in 2024, with plenty to be bullish about in the near to mid-term. However, he cautions that it won't be a straight road, noting that big capital may not be available to buy until after the summer holidays in August. Yan's bullish forecast comes at a time when Ethereum sentiment is at its lowest, despite the imminent ETF launch. He believes that many sidelined investors and traders see the current market as a bear market inflection point. However, if prices start rising convincingly, these investors will likely buy back in.
So let's talk about the future. We're looking to see if an Ethereum ETF finally gets approved. And we were asking about Solana as well. That seems to be the next big play. Do you agree that you'll see a Solana ETF from Galaxy or many others soon?
Look, we'll meet the market where it is. We'll be there if there's a Solana ETF. We have obviously a lot of exposure at Galaxy to Solana. We're the largest node validator in the entire Solana ecosystem. We know Solana well. I think less important than any single coin is the legislation, which really sets up rules that allow more than just Solana to become an ETF. Obviously, you need futures markets for Solana to be able to become an ETF. You have those for ETH. You don't yet have those for Solana.
If you could write that legislation, what would it say?
Well, there's different pieces of legislation. The first thing we need is just real clarity on what is a security and what is not a security. And we still don't have that. We're 7 years into Galaxy. We've wanted it for many of those years. The rest of it is nice to have, but that's the most important piece.
Okay, what's the date that it happens?
For which?
For Ethereum.
I think Ethereum is weeks, not days.
But within July?
Within July. Yeah, look, we've done this before. This is methodical. This is window dressing. The SEC is engaged. Obviously, Invesco Galaxy has a filing. I can't speak to the specifics of it, but we've been doing this for months now. We did it with the Bitcoin ETF. The products are substantially similar. We know the plumbing. We know the process.
The Ethereum ETF is poised to be a major catalyst for the crypto market. From expert predictions of significant capital inflows to the potential for Ethereum prices to soar, the launch of this ETF could reshape the landscape. As we've seen, regulatory clarity and investor interest are aligning to create a perfect storm for Ethereum's growth. Keep an eye on these developments, as they could present incredible opportunities for both seasoned investors and newcomers to the crypto space. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.